So the other day, I brought my daughter to work here at the European Investment Bank, and she asked me, "Where's the money?"
You should have introduced her to our guest today. He's the guy whose job it is to know where the money is, how much money there is, exactly what's happening to it, because he's the head of back office treasury.
No, but that's very interesting because I've been in on most floors of the bank. I haven't seen the money, so it'll be interesting to hear where the money comes from.
You should have gone in the back office, but today you can. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so that every week you'll find out fantastic stuff about finance from a Dictionary of Finance podcast from the European Investment Bank. Next week, we will have KYC. I won't tell you what that is just now. You'll soon know. That's a clue, in fact. So today on A Dictionary of Finance, back office treasury. We're joined by Francisco Castro Gutierrez, who is the head of back office treasury. So we've definitely got the right guy here at the European Investment Bank. Francisco is originally from Spain. Did you bring any great Spanish traditions with you to Luxembourg?
Well, I'm half French, half Spanish, so it's true that I have a Spanish passport, but I've been educated in France. But yes, I do have brought, nevertheless, some tradition, flamenco guitar. I used to be, let's say, many years ago, a good player. And then gradually my level went down and down, but I start again to play with children. So
we're gonna test you out on this. We don't have a guitar right here, but can you give us a little touch of
rasgueado?
Oh, that was really uniform. It's a dictionary of finance, but in this case it's a dictionary of music. What do you call that in flamenco?
Rasgueado.
And that's where you...
What does it mean? Oh, it's a 5-finger...
Yeah, basically you play the string with the 4 fingers, not the thumb. And it gives a rhythm, an accelerated rhythm to your guitar player.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Wow. We'll have to put some of the flamenco music into the podcast.
Yes.
Maybe in the background, as Francisco is talking about back office treasury.
Yes.
Let's get to that right now. Before we get to what is back office treasury, we need to know what is treasury. What's the treasury at a bank?
Yeah, it's a huge question. So basically, to make it short, maybe it controls and manages the bank's money. So basically, what you have in your pocket in terms of capital or liquidity, to make sure that the cash is available for the business activity. So for EIB, the lending activity.
So treasury does. You look at what sums we have to pay out to our clients over a certain period of time, and you make sure that we have at that moment the relevant currencies available on our accounts.
Yes, absolutely. So you're right to say that. The treasury of the bank is not only one currency, it's many. So we manage about 14 different currencies. The main one being, of course, the euro, but there are also many others. The dollar, the GBP is also a major currency.
So when we don't have them in cash available to give them out tomorrow, where do we have them then?
Yeah, so where is basically the money coming from? Is that your question? So like you and me, basically, you face spending. So the bank is facing the spending. So for you, it will be to pay your children education, your mortgage, etc. Some potential investment that you have here and there. And your inflow is basically your salary or other revenues. So for the bank, it is about, for the revenue, what the bank is able to borrow on the capital market. And on the lending side, it's basically the expense that the bank has to face. So in the middle, you have the treasury. The treasury is indeed, at any moment, you should be able to face your payment. So on the lending, you need to pay when we have an agreed date for disbursement, but also on the capital market, when the bond has to be redeemed, you need to make sure that you can also pay back your bond redemption.
But when we raise money, or let's not talk about specifically about EIB, but when a bank raises money by issuing bonds, for example, they get all of that money from investors, and maybe they don't need to pay that money out immediately to its clients. Where do we put that money in between?
Yeah, so it's exactly the purpose of the treasury. So you're right to say that when we borrow the cash, it doesn't mean that we lend the same day or tomorrow to the lending activity. So traditionally, on the borrowing, on the capital market, you basically raise the fund in the first half of the year. So 80% of the borrowing program is done from January to June. And then, au fil de l'eau, if I may say, from January to December, we disburse the lending activity with a big peak on the last quarter. So here, yes, you have that first effect where you have a treasury that will grow from January to June because the capital market will raise the fund, and then your treasury will pass basically from 50 billion to somewhere close to 100 billion in July. And then gradually your treasury will diminish from July to December from 100 billion to 50 billion.
When you're paying the money out
Exactly.
to the people who you've agreed to loan money to.
Exactly.
Now, is the treasury an entirely back office function? It's all back office.
It's not all back office. And so the treasury first starts with the front office. Then after we have in fee implemented since September last year a middle office. And now we have a back office, so the traditional back office who supports the front activity.
Okay,
So
let's go through them all by one. You mentioned fee. That's the financial directorate that does all of this that you were describing. What do the front office people do? They interact with the investors buying the bonds. Is that right?
So there are different front offices in fee. So you have the front treasury and you have also the front borrowing on the capital market. So there are two different departments.
Okay.
The
So
capital
let's
market.
stick with treasury. Let's
for
stick
today.
with the
Yes.
treasury. So the front office of the treasury. What do they do?
So I will take a normal day. So basically to understand what the back and the front, how they interact. So very early in the morning, around 7 p.m., the back office people arrive in the bank to do a very important task, the reconciliation of all the accounts and all the position in all currencies and all portfolios. So it means that if I was expecting, for example, some cash inflow yesterday, but for a reason or another, the counterparty did not manage to pay me on time, there is a possibility that we are short the next day. So for this, we have a claim processing, but for the front office, what is important to know is if we are short, they need to take a decision. They might say, okay, I want that account to be short and you manage this via the claim processing, or if the amount is too strategic or too important, they might want to fund the short position. So very early in the morning, the reconciliation allows with the cash management to give to the front office around 8:30 in the morning a position for T plus 1, T plus 2.
So T meaning
Today. Today plus 1 day, today plus 2 days.
Okay.
So this is the short vision of the cash management. And then on top of that, we produce also another report called liquidity planning, which gives you basically the long-term vision until the next 18 months, so that the front office can also anticipate some cash outflow and also some borrowing potentially where they need to fund the account to meet the disbursement.
And if the front office decides, they don't want to leave that position short, as you mentioned, they're the ones who go into the currency markets and trade so that they can get the currency to cover that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
and I guess the objective is to make sure that the time lag is as small as possible. So if we know that we're going to have to pay out X amount to clients in X currency tomorrow, then you will try to make sure we have that money by tomorrow morning. You're not going to have that money ready sitting in our account 2 weeks in advance.
Exactly. What you say is absolutely relevant. So what the treasury aims at is to be squared at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, the purpose of a good treasury is to have €0 in your pocket.
Okay.
It means that all the inflow that you have received during the day has been invested on the market.
Okay.
If you remain long, there is a kind of inefficiency in your treasury management.
Okay, but again, where is the money when it's not in our account? So we've issued bonds, we've raised the money from the investors, it's kind of come to us, but it's not sitting on our accounts ready to be handed out. Where do you put it in between?
So when we cash in the bond, it arrives in a bank correspondent account that the bank has opened. So for example, with a big bank correspondent, I will not give a name here because it's irrelevant, but a bank correspondent. And from that point, the treasury front office has already anticipated the arrival of the funds, and they have already 2 days before committed the bank for a money market transaction. They have maybe bought securities, they have done an FX swap, so they have a different panoply of instruments. And based on each instrument, each one has its own purpose. They are able to make sure that all the cash has gone from the account. So it's somewhere sitting at the counterparties, different accounts. And everybody does the same. So it's at a certain point, the cash is flowing everywhere.
Okay, and then we kind of call that cash in when we need to pay it out to a client.
Exactly. So let's take a concrete example. We know that in 10 days from now, we will have to disburse 1 billion euro in a very important project for the lending activity. So today, what the back office will say very early in the morning to the front office is, in 10 days from now, 1 billion has to be disbursed. So the liquidity planning will show a short position of 1 billion. So the front office, looking at that, will look at the day before, and they might decide, okay, yes, I am long by 1 billion, so I will make sure that my treasury transaction will mature the day when I need to disburse. So they might decide on different type of instrument, but what is important is that the day we need to disburse, the cash should come on the account.
So the back office of the treasury is really about keeping track of the needs of the bank, and then kind of giving the front office an insight of how much is needed.
Yeah.
What are other kinds of tasks that the back office of the treasury does?
Yeah, so we spoke about the reconciliation, the cash management and liquidity planning. So then when all those reports arrive at 8:30 on the desk of the front office starts to trade. And when they trade, after there is another activity in the back office, which is about verifying and validating the transaction. So basically, when the front has started to transact, the back office will verify and validate the transaction. So how it works in principle, 2 front offices agree on a deal, and then the back office of each bank will confirm what the front has done. So basically, we will exchange messages, confirmation messages via SWIFT to say, okay, yes, we have made, for example, a money market deposit with you. Do you confirm that it is 500 million for 10 days at X%? And then if the confirmation match, then there is what we call a settlement process. So here we indeed instruct a cash movement. So most of the time it can be same day value, but it can be T+1, T+2, depending on the instrument. So 2 days plus 1 day, 2 days plus 2 days. And at the value date, the cash indeed move from the bank correspondent of EIB to the counterparty bank correspondent. Okay. So that's what we call an exchange of cash based on SSI, settlement instruction information.
Okay, so that's the settlement. You mentioned SWIFT, so that's like a software for exchanging. Like if I exchange messages with Matt, I would do it over, I don't know, Facebook Messenger or something. SWIFT is a similar thing for banks to exchange messages amongst themselves.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, and there you have it's like if I go on my online bank account, I put in, I want to send money to, my whoever is renting me my house. It's the same kind of a thing for banks, but for a lot more money.
Exactly. So indeed, SWIFT is used most of the time by the banking industry, as a message to instruct big payment. For retail banking, there are different modes of payment, but voilà, for EIB, we indeed use Swift messages.
When I go onto my online bank to pay my phone bill or something like that, I sometimes get a little bit nervous before I press the button at the end. And I'm not talking about an awful lot of money, but you just mentioned sending a message saying, oh, 500 million euros. When you press that button, how do you feel? Do you feel a little nervous?
Hey, we do, and it's much more than 500 million, because to give you an example, in terms of volume, last year we settled 8.5 trillion euro in the back office treasury. Wow. It's about 16 times the balance sheet of the bank.
So it's a lot of back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the wheel of the treasury is very small. So I was saying between 50 to 100 billion. So that wheel has an average maturity below 3 months. While the wheel of the borrowing, it's about 7 to 8 years. Mm-hmm. And the wheel of the lending activity in the maturity, it's about 10 years, for example. So those wheels are very, very slow. So out of the 8.5 trillion that we have settled last year, 8 trillion relates to pure treasury activity. It's a lot of cash.
And I guess there's got to be like limits, like how much you are allowed to press the button for, and from what sum onwards you need to have 3 other people to validate.
Yes.
Okay.
So indeed, there are very, very stringent control. So it's not only one person who can be authorized to process the payment. So in the chain, you have always a principle of 6 sides. An inputter, so most of the time the front, when he trade, he has to input his transaction. And then there is a verificator in the back office, treasury, and a validator. Okay. So, and then of course, if people fail, there is an issue on the settlement process. But most of the time, again, it's very rare that we instruct same-day value. So if there is an issue, we have time to spot it, correct it, and process it again.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take, usually?
2 years ago, it took for a normal trade 4 hours. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of time.
Okay.
And now we are below 30 minutes.
Okay.
And the goal is really to be, for a simple trade, below 10 minutes.
Okay.
And there is no reason why it should take more than 10 minutes. When you think about that, when the traders agree on a transaction, then after, if it is absolutely fully STP, the transaction can be inputted directly in the front system. So we use Finance Kit as a front system, and front to back, the verification validation can go very, very quick if the message exchanges matches.
But what if the back office guy is out for coffee or something? It's like, then it takes 10 minutes longer, right?
Alors,
he's got to be right. He's got to be physically in front of his computer to press the button, right?
Yeah. So basically, there is indeed a team of people who are spending their time verifying, validating. But you imagine they don't do only that. Mm-hmm. So they have also meeting to manage projects.
Sure.
And we are really, really demanding in terms of project. And the project relates to what? Most of the time to the infrastructure changes that happen since the crisis everywhere in the banking industry. So maybe you heard about Target 2 security, which is the Eurosystem settlement for the securities. So. But the bank, for example, last year, on the 10th of July, went live to Target 2. So for the Eurosystem, what we call RTGS, real-time gross settlement. So instead of going through a bank correspondent, the bank now settled its Euro cash directly via the Central Bank of Luxembourg. So we collateralize our position. We put eligible security at the BCL, which allow us basically to have...
The BCL is the Central Bank of Luxembourg.
Exactly, Central Bank of Luxembourg. And the beauty of the RTGS, or the real-time gross settlement of the Eurosystem, is that when you collateralize your position, you can pay according to the amount you have collateralized. So if we have, for example, a bond redemption today of 5 billion, I just need to put 5 billion of collateral, eligible collateral at the BCL, and then I can pay very early in the morning my 5 billion, so that the paying agent can process after the payment to all the bond holders of EIB, which is very dangerous if you do not have access to the central bank, because before July last year, what happened is that if you have to redeem a bond of 5 billion, basically you need to rely on your bank correspondent to give you an intraday facility, overdraft facility, so that you can process the payment to your IPA, your issuing paying agent, before noon, before you might have received the inflows that should fund your bond redemption, coming from the lending activity or the treasury instrument. And for the cut-off time of the euro, it's until 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So nobody guarantee you that before noon you will have already cashed in those inflows.
Oh, it sounds very time sensitive, and you have these requests both from the borrowing side and the lending side. So both of these sides may need you to have cash ready to pay out, right?
Yes, exactly. You need always to have the cash ready to pay out. So it's not a question of day, it's more and more focused on intraday. And the regulation today, it's one of the big challenge in the banking system, is everywhere. So in the US, for example, the regulator already imposed to the clearing partners to have some capital requirement based on peak of intraday they provide to their clients.
Wow, I really hope we're not missing any payments during the time you're spending here talking to us. So
No.
Very, very time sensitive. But I have one other question. You mentioned middle office. I sort of understood what does the front office and the back office, what's their relationship? What's middle office do?
The middle office is here to verify other type of activity. So market reliability. So when, for example, the front agree on a deal, does it fit exactly the market? Basically, just to make sure that when you trade, you don't trade 5% on the money market deposit when the market trades at 1%. So they do this type of check.
To kind of assess the accuracy of what the front office has
done.
agreed
If
to
they
do.
have not taken positions which are completely irrelevant compared to what the market is trading today.
As it is time sensitive, we won't keep you here all day, but I do have one last question, which is, you mentioned a lot of technology and how it's changed, with the Target 2.
Target 2.
So all these different technological developments and so on. What is changing now in the Treasury? Is there some technology coming along that's going to change the way you do your job over the next couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is fundamental in all back offices. The future looks like a little bit like that. There is and there was already some automatization and simplification of processes. So here, what we are talking about is really simplify, streamline the process, and try already to put in place what we call robotization, so RPA. So
ARPA?
So robot process automation.
Okay.
What does it mean concretely? Is to automate tasks which are repetitive, for example. So when we are talking booking of 5 cents, €1, basically instead of having one staff member to crunch the data in the system, you have an algorithm which is called a robot that will do that for you based on the reconciliation discrepancy. So if, for example, I expect today 100 million and the counterparty gave me 100 million plus 5 cents, but instead of saying that this does not match, it match, but I book a 5 cents booking in my back office system. It can be also reporting activity. It can be verification activity. What's better to match two SWIFT together? If internally I expect 100 million, I receive a SWIFT message from my counterparty with all the terms of the trade, maturity, amount, currency, etc. But the human eyes is reliable, but not as much as a robot. The robot, when it says yes, it match. They don't cross the eyes with 1 or 0 too less. So all those activities will happen. So we have for this year 2 proof of concept to develop robotization in the back office, and this is only the beginning. Next year we aim at deploying all that to a much larger scale in the back office, and it's not only for EIB. This will happen everywhere in the banking system. So this is the first stage. So we spoke lean management, robotization, and then in 2-5 years from now, and it exists already in certain area, you have what we call the machine learning. So this will allow basically your automation to become intelligent. On the security world, for example, when you have corporate actions, so which is basically a coupon payment, for example, you might have a robot which is intelligent enough to analyze the type of SWIFT message that you have received and instruct the front office on the position that we have received intraday. For example, the coupon, it's most of the time cashed in upon receipt of funds. So when the issuer will pay the coupon, then the custodian will pay you on your bank account. But this, of course, you need to have an intraday monitoring, which is very, 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 very effective. And a robot, for that, can be intelligent enough to say, okay, yes, I recognize that the cash-in corresponds from the coupon that have been instructed 2 days ago, and therefore I will change the position of the front immediately, so that they know that they need to place 100 million immediately. So that's the future.
It doesn't sound like the future of back office treasury is going to get less complicated, does it? It sounds like a very, 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 very difficult thing to manage. So we're glad we've got you doing it. That's for sure.
It is indeed the complexity is the volume, of course the complexity of the trade, because treasury is by definition you need to understand the instrument, and this is it requires some education. But you can imagine that many back offices will lay off part of their staff. But on the contrary, because of the robot. But on the contrary, you need also people to manage the robot. It's exactly what happened in the automotive industry in the 60s, when basically you had a production line with people manufacturing the cars, and then gradually the robots arrive, physical robots, to put your car together. In the back office, it will arrive the same way. Instead of being robot, it will be algorithm. But you need people to control that the algorithm doesn't become crazy. You need also people to make sure that at a certain point you code well your robot, and when you have interaction with your accounting, with your risk management, when there are changes in those areas, the downstream system, your robot also capture the change required, and the algorithm is also changed. So you need different skills of people who are able to manage robots rather than managing only the transaction itself.
Francisco, thank you so much for explaining this. We should let you go back to your desk so you can trade, another 3-4 billion euros, something like that this afternoon.
Today, yes, we had 55 billion euro to trade. It's not a big day.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
How about you? A lot more than I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a big lunch.
Yeah.
It wasn't 55 billion, but that's so much. So to our listeners, subscribe to this podcast. You'll get experts like Francisco appearing out of your phone by magic every week. If you subscribe, you can subscribe on Spotify, iTunes, all the other places where you can get podcasts. And be in touch with us. I'm at EIB Matt, M-A-T-T.
And I'm at Dollar Tankler, ALLAR, And if you subscribe, it's like a robot. The robot in your phone pulls a new episode of the podcast into your phone every day.
And next week, that new episode will be on KYC. If you don't know what that is, well, then you better listen next week. And now, in the meantime, because he's not a robot and he's actually a very creative guy, Francisco, play us out with a little rasgueado.
Rasgueado.
Ole!
Ole.